You are tuned to Warsaw. Hello and welcome to Focus, our cultural magazine. I'm Janiszewska, your today's host. In this edition, we will be speaking with a famous Norwegian writer, Maja Lunde, whose latest novel, The Stop Time, has been recently released in Poland. For years, her captivating books have topped the shelves in Poland, a country that was among the first to warmly embrace her penmanship. That's why she places a high priority on visiting this vibrant nation whenever she launches her latest work. During her meet and greet in Warsaw, I had the opportunity to talk with her about the book, her writing journey, and what readers can expect from her in the near future. So, a world without a passing time. I think it is as scary as exhilarating, the vision. And in your latest novel, we can actually dive into it and have a glimpse of what it could actually look like. So, what do you think scares people the most about such a scenario, and what excites us about this one?
Well, for the characters in my novel, in the beginning, it's a gift, to have all the time in the world, to know that your body doesn't change, that you don't age anymore. It seems like something we really long for. But after a while, it turns out to be quite a scary scenario, and frustration grows. Because what do you do if life doesn't end? What do you do if you have no limits? What does that do to your life and the relationship you have with people that you love? So this frustration and desperation quite soon become visible in the story.
And speaking of those characters, there are three different perspectives. In my opinion, I think it added an extra flavor to the whole story, and also three different views on life. So I guess it was intentional. However, why did you choose to juxtapose those perspectives with one another?
Well, the main character in the story is Jenny. She's a mother of three, and she has just been diagnosed with cancer, and she's also a photographer, so she's sort of the way into the story. And then these other characters reflects upon her life, I would say. I wanted to show how this new situation, what it would do to different stages of life. If you're old, for example, like Otto, one of the main characters, he has just moved to an apartment with his wife. They have moved away from his large house and his garden that he loves, because they are getting older, and she wants them to move into something more comfortable and easy. And now suddenly they realize they have all the time in the world, that they are not aging anymore. What does that do to their situation? So that is something I wanted to examine, to look into.
So is this book in a way a response to the current events, like for instance pandemic, which happened 5 years ago, or just even climate change?
Well, I actually wrote the first draft in 2015 and 2016. This book started as my fear of getting older. I turned 40 and I started to reflect upon death. I put it aside because I wanted to finish the Climate Quartet. I wanted to finish Blue and Przewalski Horse and The Dream of a Tree. And then while I was writing these books, quite often I went back and looked at this script as well. And then after being done with the Climate Quartet, I opened it again and finished the book. Looking at the pandemic, for example, living through the pandemic also made me look at this text from another angle, I think, because there are some similarities, definitely. And what this story is also very much about is how man, in extreme situations, always try to find some kind of normality. And that was what happened through the pandemic as well. Quite soon we became used to this extreme situation, and that is also a bit what is happening in my novel, Normality takes us even in the most extremes.
So I guess while writing this book, you were simply reflecting on what it was like to getting old or to face all of the different challenges.
Well, this is also my attempt to become friends with death and become friends with age. It can be hard to get older, and quite soon I'm 50. But on the other hand, I have gained so much knowledge throughout the years I've lived. And I think in modern society, we strive for the impossible. We always try to be 25. We should stop doing that. So this is my way of also embracing getting older. And I would never change, I wouldn't change the mind I have today with the mind I have when I was 25 years old, all the knowledge that I have now. I would never change. And I think we need to look differently on age, and we need to stop trying to be young. We need to love age in a different way than we do.
But also you touch upon topics like climate crisis, for instance, and I noticed that you write about this quite often. So what drives your interest in this environmental storytelling?
All my novels are about the relationship between parents and children, and the relationship between man and nature. And in my story, one of the theories upon what has happened, why do time stop? Because that's a question that quite soon become visible in the story, is that nature has almost thrown man out, because nature keeps going. The trees are getting green, birds and animals give birth, while man can't give birth anymore. Children are not born and people don't die. So it's like man has been thrown out of nature. This is also, you can read this if you want to, as a way of looking at the relationship between man and nature. Maybe nature is just fed up with man. Maybe nature doesn't want the human being on this planet anymore, and can quite easily realize why, because we are really destroying nature.
And while I was reading your book, I kind of also felt this unease regarding, new technologies and how they also have impact on not only, nature, but also our life. So was that kind of like a warning that we should take into account that what we do and how we develop, have consequences?
This is very much a novel about photography. The main character is a photographer, and you can read it as she's the one who stops time with her camera, because there are several levels in this book, and you can read it in several ways. But it's also very much a novel about how we try to stop time with photography in social media, how we try to stop time in our bodies with, for example, Botox, and trying to keep young all the time. And there are several conspiracy theories in the novel. This is also a book about conspiracy theorists, because one of the characters, Philip, he's trying to find answer and trying to find some kind of solution in these theories. And one of them is that it's AI in the future who has done this to us, because AI wants to solve the climate crisis. And what's the rational answer to solving the climate crisis for AI? It's to get rid of the human being, which is sort of logical when you think of it. For the last couple of years, I've been sort of an activist when it comes to not only the climate crisis, but also technology in Norway. And this is something that I have strong opinions. We need to reflect more upon our relationship with technology and our relationship with the tech giants, because 5 of the 10 biggest companies in the world are technology companies. And our time, in their eyes, our time is what they earn money from. So this is also something that is somehow reflected in the book, I would say.
For sure. And also I would add to it that how much we rely on technology and how we think that it will solve all of our problems, even regarding death, I think. And speaking of those characters, how do you come up with them? Because some of them feel very real to me. I mean, I had that kind of a feeling. And so do you somehow base some of them off of the people that you know, and maybe stories that you've had heard? Because, some of their dialogues, their relationships, they felt really real. And I was thinking to myself, what a penmanship.
Well, they are all part of me, I would say. So they are all there in my mind somewhere. And of course, I get inspiration all the time. And I would also say that Jenny, the main character, she resembles me a lot, because her desperation, I wanted to be true to that desperation. She is dying. She's leaving her kids. She has cancer and they will lose their mother. And that feeling, to get into that feeling, it's the most scary thing for a mother, to actually leave your children. And I wanted to be true to that. So that's why I also tried to write her as similar to me as I could, even though I would say she's much braver. And also Otto, one of the other main characters, he loves gardening. And he has to leave his garden, his beloved garden, because his wife wants them to move into an apartment for elderly people, a convenient apartment with an elevator and a garage and stuff like that, and he hates that. And I can totally relate to it, because I love gardening as well, and I would hate it to leave my garden like that.
Have you maybe taken from your background from writing books for children to explain this topic even for adults a little bit simpler, just so we all can kind of reflect upon that?
I never really think about what kind of reader the story has. I think about the story and the character, and I try to be true to the story and the character. And it's not easier to write for children or adults. It's always difficult depending on how the story is evolving. And when I write about a child, I try to be on the inside of the brain of that child. I try to use the child's language. And I don't really think about my books for children as children books. I think they are all agers. And I know a lot of adults who also read them for themselves, so it's really about the character, not about the reader.
And when you write those books, do they stay with you after you finish them, or you simply just, put them down and you're moving on to another story that maybe is emerging in your head?
Both, I would say. All the stories are in me forever, and all the characters as well. And sometimes I'm asked, which of your characters do you like the most? And that's impossible to say, because it's like asking me which of my kids I like the most. So they always stay, and they are always part of me. I also have so many stories in my head that I have not yet written. So I'm also always, I look into the future and I plan ahead, and I think about what I hope I will have time to write, even though I don't want to live forever, like in my novel.
For sure. And since you often speak about technology and its influence, but I want to touch upon it in my next question, because for instance, nowadays there is such a huge, massive community on TikTok, on social media like Instagram, of people who simply promote reading and just show that it's a great entertainment. And what do you think about that people actually looking for books on the internet, they try to kind of convince themselves that it's a good way to spend your time, and now through the technology we can actually go and find out those books and maybe some reviews, and because of that we end up actually reading.
I see it from two sides, because I think that's great effect of social media, is that it can give you recommendations on book that you might not have found yourself. On the other hand, we always had the libraries. We always had the bookstores. We always had really good librarians who could recommend books to us. So we found our way into the literature before social media even more. And we do know now that children are reading less and less, and it's a huge problem, because they spend so much time on social media and on the internet and on gaming, and it's taking time away from reading. So even though some people are reading more or finding other titles because of social media, when you look at it in total, reading is really declining, and that's a huge problem. We need the knowledge society, and the democracy needs that we read. We do need readers in a modern society. So that's something that deeply worries me. And I do think also that the ones who find literature in social media, they would have read anyways.
And your books are translated into so many different languages, including Polish. Are you excited to find that so many Poles love your books, and we actually do read them? We love your stories so much, and whenever we can meet you, we go to those meetings. So what do you think about that, you know, so far from your home, you found this huge community of your, let's say, fans?
I love to come here, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to meet Polish readers. And Poland was actually the first country outside of Norway that embraced my books. So I would say you will always have a special place in my heart.
And the last question, can you maybe tell us if you are working on something new?
Well, last autumn I published a book in Norway, a non-fiction book about children and screen and children and technology, which might be published in Poland, I don't know yet. And this autumn I will publish the last book with Lisa Aisoto, which is set in autumn, which is a new all-ager, and it's called The Thunder Queen. So that will be very exciting. And I'm also working on a new novel, which is sort of a Christmas story for adults, and it's about hope.
Okay, can't wait to read that then. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
In this edition of Focus, we were joined by Maja Lunde, a famous Norwegian writer whose books have been translated into more than 40 languages. And that was all for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Janiszewska. Bye-bye.